Good morning and welcome to the 20th Annual Cardinal O'Connor Conference on Life. My name is Julia Greenwood and I am a senior here at Georgetown. I have had the immense pleasure of co-directing this year's conference with Madeleine Ostertag.
We would like to take the time now to thank all those who made this year's conference possible. To our board, Amelia Irvin, Erica Leza, Milan Metzger, Havens Clark, Maria Boyvid, Michael DeFelice, and Luke Lamy. And finally, there are many generous Georgetown entities without whom this conference would not be possible. We would like to especially thank President John DeGioia, who is with us here today, Father Mark Bosco, Vice President for Mission and Ministry, Dr. Todd Olson, Vice President for Student Affairs, Dr. Jean Lord, Associate Vice President for Student Affairs and Dean of Students, the Initiative on Catholic Social Thought and Public Life, and its Director, John Carr, and Associate Director Kim Daniels, Father Greg Shendon, Director of Campus Ministry, and Dr. Jim Wickman, Director for Catholic Life.
This January marks 46 years of Roe v. Wade. Many of you marched yesterday in remembrance of the 60 million children whose lives have been ended by abortion since 1973. And we are reminded, especially this weekend, of the importance of defending the dignity of all human life. Just 3 days ago here at Georgetown, an abortionist who identifies himself as a Christian gave a speech on his work.
We went and we listened, and as disheartening as it was to find that such a man has an audience here on our campus, we were also reminded how inconsistent and incoherent the argument for abortion is, and moreover, what an utter perversion of Christian understanding of love and compassion this man preached. We are, however, inspired and filled with hope by the witness of hundreds of thousands of people marching for life yesterday, and the love and joy that is very much alive in the pro-life movement.
We are, moreover, so thrilled that you have chosen to spend your Saturday here with us, especially those of you who have come from so far away. We'd like to give a shout out to the 50 pilgrims from the Archdiocese of Sydney, Australia, especially Archbishop Anthony Fisher and Bishop Richard Umbers. We are so excited that you are here today, and we're also excited to be joined by many other large student groups, especially St. Louis University and some others.
We have planned this conference in the hopes that it will encourage intellectual discourse on the sanctity of human life and that you will leave equipped with the tools to promote a culture of life in your own communities. To that effect, you will notice that there are several pages at the end of your programs with lined paper so that you may take notes if you are so inclined.
Additionally, we invite you to connect with us on social media. See page 2 in your programs for more information. Connect with us on Facebook, Twitter, and Snapchat throughout the day. John Cardinal O'Connor, an alumnus of Georgetown, was a renowned and courageous advocate for a culture of life during his tenure as Archbishop of New York. In January 2000, Georgetown students first hosted a pro-life conference for the many college students and pro-life activists who travel to our nation's capital for the March for Life each year. The conference was later named in Cardinal O'Connor's honor. The Cardinal O'Connor Conference has grown to become the largest student-run pro-life conference in the United States. We are honored to continue that tradition today for the 20th time.
As you may know, this year's conference was sold out at the beginning of December, and so we are so thrilled to have so many of you with us today. Unfortunately, inclement weather prevented some of our larger groups to be with us, but we are so honored that you have chosen to spend your Saturday here with us. Cardinal O'Connor famously said, "It is my very sincere prayer that if I live for a week, if I live for 20 years, my last breath will be in support of the sacredness of every human life." We as a conference are inspired by his unwavering commitment to human life and dignity. Over the past year of conference planning, we were particularly conscious of our conference's history as we mark this important anniversary. As we look toward the future of the conference, as well as the future of the pro-life movement itself, we considered strategies that will enable the pro-life movement to advance. This anniversary inspired us to develop the following theme: pro-life priorities, advancing a culture of life. With this theme in mind, we hope to consider various life issues and their futures with the ultimate goal of defending and promoting a consistent ethic of life. We would like to begin the morning in prayer. It is my sincere honor to welcome to the stage His Excellency Archbishop Anthony Fisher.
Thank you, Your Eminence, College President and leadership team, all of you, my brothers and sisters in Christ. Pentecost was, in a sense, the very first Christian conference. The disciples gathered in their conference room. Peter was to give the keynote address to the newborn church. But the sound and light system, as often happens at church events, went berserk. And Christians quickly attributed this to the wind and flame of the Holy Spirit. There was plenty of networking as people of diverse languages found they could even understand those with Aussie accents. But those first disciples began as we do, with prayer, acknowledging we cannot do bioethics or biotechnology or biopolitics or biotheology or anything else well on our own. We know we need a saviour. We need that Spirit who ensures our relationship to the Saviour. We need to be consecrated by the Spirit of truth, the Lord of life, if we are to be Catholic bioethicists or Christian thinkers, or indeed truly good human beings. We need His sense of priorities if we are to reverence the dignity of every human person and embrace the right priorities in advancing a culture of life. We need that healing peace that the world cannot give. In our own hearts, our families, colleges and universities, healthcare professions, legal institutions, politics and culture. Looking at our church and culture today, we might be tempted to despair, like those who suffered terrible persecution at the hands of the Roman Empire in the ancient church, and then those who saw that Roman civilization crumbling around them. Little did they imagine that a whole new civilization was just around the corner, inspired by Christian ideals and advanced by the monastic movement, great fathers of the church, and other evangelical energies. Or at the end of the Dark Ages, when the corruption in the church, especially of church leadership, appalled everyone, and dark dualist heresies were re-emerging. Few could have guessed that the Middle Ages were just around the corner. With a renewed Christianity promoted by the friars, the new universities, the scholastic theologians, great saints, and more. Or in the depths of the Reformation and the wars of religion that tore Christendom asunder, when the church seemed doomed to resist the deep reform it needed, none imagined that a spiritual renaissance was afoot, progressed by Jesuits and other new orders, a new Christian humanism, new missionary adventures, and new saints. Or when the Enlightenment, with its reign of terror, Napoleonic violence, and totalising ideologies, threatened to de-Christianise and secularize all of Western society, Who imagined that the rise of the great 19th century missionary orders was just around the corner? With new Catholic colleges, such as this one, and so many around us up on the ceiling, and other projects all around the world, often again led by new young saints. Time and again, seers have declared that God is dead and his church doomed. But by the living God's grace, Christianity has recovered its spiritual roots, regained its evangelical energies, retrieved its intellectual seriousness, and reimagined its social contribution. Even as our church experiences again the dark before the light, we Christians must renew our zeal for converting our culture and those who are carried by it, our great institutions, not just our church, but our neighbours, ourselves. Young people will be absolutely crucial here. Ultimately, your consistent witness to the truth by your words and to human dignity by your deeds, especially in the public square, will have the greatest effect. And such renewal, such imagination, such faith will only come by God's gift. And so we pray. Father, rich in mercy and love, after the sin of Adam and Eve, after the violence of Cain, you would not leave humanity alone in the throes of evil. You continued to shower your love from generation to generation on those who revered you. You so loved the world that in the fullness of time you sent your only Son. He is the way, the truth, and the life for us, so we might be pro-way, pro-truth, and pro-life. You chose Mary Immaculate to be his mother. Throughout his life and even at the cross, she witnessed his words of life and love for humanity. Merciful Lord, look kindly now on this conference as we explore together that gospel of life and love. Give us hearing ears, prudent minds, and discerning hearts. Enlighten our intellects with your spirit of truth, that the deceiver may be vanquished and your people consecrated in the truth. Pour afresh into our hearts your spirit of peace, that all violence may be purged from within us and our communities dedicated to peace. We make this prayer through Christ our Lord. Our Lady, help of Christians, pray for us.
Thank you, Archbishop Fisher. Before we turn to our highly anticipated keynote address, we would like to remind you of our speech and expression policy. Georgetown University is committed to standards promoting speech and expression that foster the exchange of ideas and opinions. While it is recognized that not everyone may share the same views as the speaker, it is expected that everyone in attendance at this event respect the right of the speaker and our conference board to share their perspectives and ideas by not causing a disruption to the day's activities. With that said, we are honored to welcome Timothy Cardinal Dolan, Archbishop of New York, as our keynote speaker this year. We are particularly honored to celebrate our 20th anniversary by welcoming John Cardinal O'Connor's second successor. Timothy Dolan was named Archbishop of New York by Pope Benedict XVI in 2009. He had served as Archbishop of Milwaukee, appointed there by Pope St. John Paul II in 2002. On June 19, 2001, the 25th anniversary of his ordination to the priesthood, then Monsignor Dolan was named the Auxiliary Bishop of St. Louis by Pope St. John Paul II. Cardinal Dolan served as chairman of Catholic Relief Services and is a member of the Board of Trustees of the Catholic University of America. He is also a member of the Pontifical Council for Promoting New Evangelization, the Pontifical Council for Social Communications, and at the Vatican, the Congregation for Eastern Churches and the Congregation for the Evangelization of Peoples. Cardinal Dolan was elected to a 3-year term as president of the United States Conference of Catholic Bishops in November 2010. In 2012, Pope Benedict XVI announced that Timothy Dolan was to be appointed to the College of Cardinals. Again, we are honored to have His Eminence with us today. Please join me in welcoming Timothy Cardinal Dolan.
This is like Yankee Stadium. Thank you. Boy, thank you very much, everybody. Believe me, it's a real honor and a joy to be with you this very happy morning. President DeGioia, thanks for your gracious hospitality. Julia and Madeleine, what wonderful leadership. You two co-directors of our Cardinal O'Connor Conference. It has such national and international acclaim. I'm glad that John Carr and Kim Daniels are here. It's a real light on your campus, their initiative on Catholic social thought and public life. And Archbishop Fisher and Bishop Umbers, thank you. How good to have your company. Archbishop Fisher, my oh my. Here, I thought a Bronx accent was thick. It's nothing compared to Australia, huh? So you're not going to be surprised that I especially savor the chance to salute a towering prophet in our beloved nation's pursuit of the civil rights of the baby in the womb, John Cardinal O'Connor, after whom this lecture is so appropriately entitled. You know, just last Monday, we celebrated his 99th birthday, but he remains, doesn't he, ever young and timeless in so many souls, especially for his daring pro-life witness. Let me tell you, on the sidewalks of New York to this day, do we have any New Yorkers here? Way to go. I thought I saw some hot dog wrappers outside thrown to the side. On the sidewalks in New York to this day, will I encounter women and men whose eyes moisten and whose throats lump as they recall stories to me, his unworthy successor. Hundreds of cops will show me his picture enshrined on the inside of their uniform hats. Waiters and bartenders, not that I meet that many, will recall a word of spiritual encouragement that he gave them. Only recently did I have breakfast with a very generous philanthropist, and no, President DeGioia, I'm not giving you his name, who recalled an invitation to breakfast from His Eminence. At the time, he went on to tell me, he was living a rather notorious, immoral, scandalous life. And as breakfast began, he brashly told the cardinal, I know you only invited me to ask for money. How much do you want? And Cardinal O'Connor looked him in the eye and he calmly replied, keep your money, I want your soul. And to this day, this prominent benefactor could not relate the story without choking up. For that Christ-like rejoinder from John Joseph O'Connor was the spark to his conversion. And by the way, the cardinal got his money as well. So, and then there was the 22-year-old senior at Fordham University. Are you familiar with Fordham? It's the premier Jesuit university in America. President DeGioia, Father McShane told me that if I said that here at Georgetown, my niece would get a scholarship. So that's done, all right? This senior at Fordham introduced himself as John Joseph, telling me his mom had been considering aborting him until She heard the Cardinal speak so tenderly and compellingly about the sanctity of preborn life at a Sunday sermon. Thus did he bear the Cardinal's name. If all the marches, all the prayers, all the vigils, the lectures, articles, debates, I'm quoting from him, and encyclicals save but one tiny fragile life, would not the Lord of life say to us, well done, good and faithful servant? For you not only fed me and clothed me, encouraged and consoled me, visited me in prison and welcomed me a stranger, you saved my life. So he wrote only months before brain cancer took him 19 years ago. So I thank you for dedicating this lecture to him. It's humbling to be with you, especially you young people, who I claim to be genuine confessors of the faith, courageous apostles who year after year, in the capital of the nation built to serve a republic founded on certain inalienable rights, with that to life put first, a nation so big in power, might, influence, prestige, and cash, that you would year after year stand up for the tiny, fragile, helpless, innocent infant in the intended sanctuary of the mother's womb. It was my privilege to be with you yesterday at the march, and I noticed this morning that I still bear the marks of mud on my cuffs and my shoes. So thank you, courageous students here at Georgetown University and those who have come from afar. It was just 2 years ago that I had the privilege of addressing the Rose Dinner that was held again last evening. I understand Jeannie Mancini, who does such a great job hosting that, is going to be with you later. And I commented at that time, everybody, how but a month prior, the world had paused to recall that at the very center of history, at the very moment when BC became AD, stands a pregnant woman. That brave woman of Nazareth who exclaimed to her cousin Elizabeth, both with what we would today term a problem pregnancy, my soul proclaims the greatness of the Lord, for he has looked with favor on his lowly servant. He has cast down the mighty from their thrones and has lifted up the lowly. The mighty may mock, as they do today from academia, Hollywood, the media, Congress, and courtroom, but today you and I acclaim the power of one. Even the smallest can change the course of history, to quote from Tolkien, as we salute the power of one baby in the womb of his mother, born at Bethlehem, and the civil rights of the tiniest today, the baby in the womb, to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. I look out with intense admiration this morning at a hall of ones who have become one, inspired in part by that one woman who believed that the one true God had lifted her up to give a human nature to one who would be called the Son of God. That's the power of one. When we more seasoned adults have the cherished opportunity to speak to those younger, as I do this happy morning, we're usually expected to urge them not to repeat our past mistakes. Oh, I've got a lot of them. But one such that I made in college when I was the age of most of you in this historic hall this morning was to ignore philosophy, to concentrate not on the wisdom, seminal normative ideas that had formed culture, but on more practical, strategic classes. I regret I did not take philosophy more seriously. I've since tried to compensate by reading the classics of philosophy, which we back then refused to do. But I still regret that eclipse of philosophy in my own academic formation. Yeah, to be sure, I wish I were better versed in the wisdom of Aristotle and Plato, Augustine, Bonaventure, and Thomas Aquinas, but I also wish I better comprehended the empiricism of Comte, the utilitarianism of Bentham, the pragmatism of Mill and James. Because, folks, ideas have consequences. Ideas have consequences. Those philosophers we thought irrelevant, both those who had given us the moral, political, economic, and spiritual coherence that we usually call civilization, and yes, those who were dismantling it, were expounding ideas, see, that would shape what we today think of the true nature of a human person. I had the gift of graduate study in history across town at the Catholic University of America. And in his lectures on the French Revolution, the Venerable John Tracy Ellis would recount those conversations of the elite thinkers in the mid-18th century salons of Paris, who would toss around ideas and theories to overthrow an ardent culture of faith and reason. Ideas, Ellis commented, then as they tossed them out the window, ideas then taken up by the crowds, the mobs, hanging around the streets outside of those salons, see? And those ideas had profound consequences in the decades ahead up until right now. Think about it. For instance, Charles Darwin, whose theory of evolution was sadly reduced improperly to a social strategy of survival of the fittest, leading to a victory of the most lethal, where the weakest were left behind in a grand march of progress. Think of Friedrich Nietzsche's Death of God, with its emphasis on regeneration through destruction and a celebration of the will to power. Think of Ludwig Feuerbach's subjectivism, that God is a mere projection of ourselves, that we individually define the good with no objective truth to protect others, especially the weakest. Think of Karl Marx's materialism, that the spiritual, see, is only an illusion, that economics is the new code to understanding history and the human person, that ethics and belief needed to be steamrolled by the will of the proletariat. Think of the utilitarianism of Jeremy Bentham that reduces the valuable to the useful. Think of the pragmatism of John Stuart Mills that claims the worthwhile is only what works for us. Behold, my friends, what the British historian Owen Chadwick calls the secularization of the Western mind with the biblical understanding of the human person and of good and evil on the run. Behold the dictatorship of relativism, Pope Benedict grieved. Behold a Senate hearing that could question the suitability of an acclaimed jurist for a higher appointment because, quote, dogma rings loudly in you, or another candidate labeled an extremist because he belongs to the Knights of Columbus, or a third-term governor in a state that I know well who insists that those questioning abortion on demand, paid for by everybody up to the moment of birth, those opposing it are retrogrades holding back progressivism. Behold the throwaway culture, regretted so eloquently by Pope Francis. George Weigel, who I understand is going to be speaking later, posits that Pope St. John Paul II believed that every problem we face today comes from a faulty understanding of the nature of the human person, what he called flawed anthropology. Is it any wonder St. John Paul, himself a philosopher, would commence the project to reclaim the truth of the dignity of the human person and the sanctity of human life as revealed by God, as so evident in our nature, discoverable by enlightened reason, a project advanced by his successors, Benedict XVI and Francis, a project of which we're now part, as this flawed understanding of the human person reached a tragic but logical outcome in Roe v. Wade. For if, my friends, you believe that what is true is only what can be verified in a laboratory, that what is good is only what is useful, functional, and productive, that what is beautiful is only what I want, what I need, what I find convenient, what I consider helpful to reach my goals, that the divine is no longer thee, but me, well, no surprise that an innocent baby in the womb would be deemed useless and inconvenient, that grandma, dying slowly yet naturally, would be thought a burden and annoyance, that a refugee would be caricatured as a rapist, a terrorist, a drug runner. To reclaim the truth of the human person with its liberating and uplifting logical corollary of human dignity and the sacredness of all life, let me for a minute hold up the example of a man who displayed the power of one, a man familiar to some of you, I hope, certainly to our New Yorkers, Detective Stephen McDonald, whom all of New York City mourned as we buried him from St. Patrick's Cathedral just 2 weeks ago, this very week. See, in September 1986, Stephen, a handsome, strapping, 29-year-old, third-generation New York cop, passionately in love with his beautiful wife of 6 months, Patty Ann, who was 3 months pregnant with their first baby. Stephen was shot 3 times in the back by a 15-year-old boy who had stolen a bike in Central Park. For months and months, he struggled to survive. When finally removed from ICU after 3 long months, he was told that he was paralyzed from the neck down, never again to breathe, eat, drink, or move on his own. His first public words, proclaimed by his wife Patty, since Stephen could only barely whisper, were addressed to his assailant, "I forgive you." Those 3 bullets did not kill Stephen's body. Those 3 words showed that neither would they kill his soul. He would later explain, everywhere, in classrooms, assemblies, dinners, to cops and criminals and families angry at those who had taken the life of one they love, that anger and violence and resentment, hatred and revenge could kill a lot more effectively than even 3 bullets. When his assailant went before the parole board, guess who testified on his behalf? And when the shooter admitted at the parole hearing that if he were released, he really had no place to stay, it was Stephen and Patty who spoke up. He can live with us. Now, in the eyes, folks, of a purely pragmatic, utilitarian, empirical, economically driven world, Stephen McDonald was useless, unproductive, inconvenient, a burden to himself, his family, to society. Stephen himself would confess that he was often tempted to conclude this in his terrible months of helpless struggle to recover, at times wishing he would die. But in the eyes of his wife, he was her husband, whose love did not depend upon the physical, but upon a bond not verifiable under a microscope. To Connor, his son, who never knew his dad without a wheelchair, feeding tube, and breathing tube, and who is today himself a New York police officer, his love for his dad did not depend upon his ability to throw a baseball, cut the grass, or bring home the bacon, but came from an identity based on who he was, his dad, not what he had or what he could do. To the New York Police Department, which insisted on keeping him on full-time, Stephen's value was hardly reduced to his ability to pull a pistol or to write a speeding ticket, but to be a true justice of the peace in his accompaniment of wounded fellow cops, his encouragement to families of police officers killed in duty, his lectures to new recruits on how a desire for revenge or the motive of anger never works. In his hours of reconciliation sessions between victims and perpetrators, in his prison visits, boy, he accompanied more than many others on the beat wearing badges. And to a world tempted to believe religion an opiate and faith a superstition, Stephen showed a hope and love which he insisted only came from union with the Lord, nurtured by prayer and the sacraments, the fortification of his deep Catholic faith. So often would Stephen call his parish priest at 2 a.m., telling him he couldn't sleep and asking if the pastor could go over to open the church so he could be driven up by Patty to pray, that the priest finally gave him a key. Behold the power of one. Behold the consequences of ideas translated into beliefs grounded in faith. Behold a life many today might consider a waste, an inconvenience, a burden, a life transformed into an icon of reconciliation and love. As Detective MacDonald remarked, the value of life depends not on what you have or what you do, but on who you are, a child of God made in his image, destined for eternity, put here for a purpose, an identity made the stronger the more it is tested. Maybe it was Stephen whom Cardinal O'Connor had in mind when he wrote, "Each one of us is an unrepeatable act of God, each one brought into being for a specific purpose, a purpose that will not be carried out by anybody else. It is this person's unique mission. This makes every human being at every inch of life's journey sacred and inviolable." All right, I got to ask myself, everybody, as I did in preparing the talk, am I being too, here it is, thanks. There it is, thank you. You said you were going to get me a Bloody Mary. What's going on? I got to ask myself, am I being too theological here? Too spiritual? Too Catholic? Well, the patriarch whose birthday our nation will observe Monday would tell me, no, Brother Timothy, you are not. About a year ago on the Amtrak back to New York, I sat next to the Reverend Jesse Jackson. And I asked him about Martin Luther King, and boy, was he ever happy to talk. And one of the things he said to me was this: Martin's preferred title was not doctor, but reverend. He saw himself first as a pastor, a preacher, a minister, a man of God. His civil rights crusade did not come from his study of the law, philosophy, or economics, but from what God had revealed to us about himself, God, and about ourselves. Namely, we're made in his image and likeness, and we thus treat ourselves and others with reverence, justice, equality, and respect. As simple as that. The cardinal again. We have to keep an appreciation of being, the fact that we just are. All being is made in the image and likeness of God. Today, there seems to be a contempt for being, a preference for having and doing. The genuine reason we have this pro-life movement is because we have an awesome sense of the sacredness of just being, which cannot be trumped by the exigencies of having and doing. Martin Luther King, John Cardinal O'Connor. The Cardinals' pro-life credentials, like those of the Reverend King, did not exclude a burning solicitude for the sick, the poor, the underpaid laborer, the immigrant, the dying, the person on death row, the minorities, the oppressed, or the war-torn. You may know that Cardinal O'Connor was one of the earliest advocates for those affected with AIDS, urging a compassionate and non-judgmental approach, opening the first and today the largest AIDS treatment facility in New York at the Terence Cardinal Cook Center, and himself spending Wednesday afternoons emptying bedpans and bathing victims of AIDS. He would insist, though, in spite of that holistic approach to pro-life, that if we get it wrong in ignoring the civil rights of the preborn, we'll sure have a tough time promoting all the others with any integrity and forcefulness. Pope Francis would seem to agree. In his letter to the Pontifical Academy for Life just a couple of weeks ago, the Holy Father describes what he calls the paradox of progress. How can those who consider themselves progressive or humanists, Pope Francis wonders, advance a cause that would trample the right to life of a little baby in the womb? As he asked elsewhere, how can an act that suppresses an innocent and helpless life as it blossoms in the womb ever be thought therapeutic, civil, or simply humane? This is hardly progress. A genuine progressivism, now these are my words, would always advocate for the weakest, the most vulnerable, those with no one to defend them. A sincere progressive in our American tradition would accompany and support a pregnant woman and new mom and advocate for the life of her baby. Pope Francis, let me conclude. Pope Francis has often expressed anxiety that the older we get, and he includes himself in this, the more fatigued we might become in what St. Paul calls fighting the good fight. Weariness can set in. Such can be the case, my brothers and sisters, for those of us who have been fighting for the human rights of the preborn baby since January 22nd, 1973. You know the antidote to that weariness that Pope Francis prescribes? You. As he said to the youth in Rio de Janeiro, and as most likely will repeat to the youth of the world gathered later this week in Panama, do us a favor. Do your duty and keep the dream alive. The journalist David Brooks holds that a humane, prosperous, vibrant culture has to have both memory and dreams. Those my age are pretty good at providing the memory. We count on you to provide the dream. John Cardinal O'Connor had a dream. Reverend Martin Luther King had a dream. Pope Francis has one. I got one, and so do you. Sometimes at my age it might fade a bit, but not this morning, not as I look out at all of you. For as the prophet Habakkuk encourages, for the dream awaits its appointed time. It hastens to the end. It will not let us down. If it seems slow, await it. It will surely come. It will never disappoint. Thank you. Thank you. Thanks. Thank you, folks. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Cardinal Dolan. It is truly an honor to hear Cardinal Dolan's keynote address this morning. We are so grateful for His Eminence's commitment to the pro-life movement. Here at the Cardinal O'Connor Conference, we strive to recognize commitment to the movement, particularly of collegiate pro-life groups. The Evangelium Vitae Award was established in 2006 to recognize and reward outstanding collegiate pro-life groups. In 2010, the award was renamed in honor of Reverend Thomas King, S.J. The winning group each year is selected based on the pro-life work it has done over the past year and receives a $1,000 award to advance future pro-life work. Father King was a mentor to Georgetown Right to Life and a beloved professor of theology, whose tenure spanned nearly 4 decades here at Georgetown. Father King passed away in 2009, and he is the namesake of our award, having provided a brilliant witness to human life. In a moment, I would like to introduce Georgetown University's president, John DeGioia, who will share a brief reflection on Father King and present the 2019 award. For close to 4 decades, John J. DeGioia has helped define and strengthen Georgetown University as a premier institution for education and research. A Georgetown alumnus, Dr. DeGioia served as a senior administrator and as a faculty member in the Department of Philosophy before becoming Georgetown's 48th president in 2001. As president, Dr. DeGioia is dedicated to deepening Georgetown's tradition of academic excellence, its commitment to its Catholic and Jesuit identity, its engagement with the Washington, D.C. community, and its global mission. Under his leadership, Georgetown has become a leader in shaping the future landscape of higher education and has recently completed a $1.5 billion fundraising campaign dedicated to enhancing the lifelong value of a Georgetown education. Dr. DeGioia is also a leading voice in addressing broader issues in education. He previously served as the chair of the board of directors of the American Council on Education, and he is currently chair of the board of directors of the Forum for the Future of Higher Education. He is a member of the board of directors of the Carnegie Corporation of New York, as well as the National Association of Independent Schools. He also serves as chair of the Division I Committee on Academics for the NCAA, a commissioner on the Knight Commission on Intercollegiate Athletics, a member of the Global University Leaders Forum at the World Economic Forum, and a member of the board of directors for the Business Higher Education Forum. Please join me in giving a warm welcome to President DeGioia.
Well, thank you very much, Erica, for your introduction and for your leadership. And I also wish to offer, on behalf of all of us, our sincere gratitude to His Eminence, Cardinal Dolan, for his presence here this morning and for his reflections. Good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to have you here and welcome so many of you to Georgetown and to Gaston Hall, one of our most beautiful and historic places on our campus. I wish to express our appreciation to the student leaders on the Cardinal O'Connor Conference Board and its co-directors, Madeleine and Julia, for their many efforts to organize this year's conference, as well as our conference sponsors, including Georgetown Right to Life, the Knights of Columbus, and Catholic Women at Georgetown. We're also grateful for the engagement of our Office of Mission and Ministry, our initiative on Catholic social thought and public life, our Office of Student Affairs. I want to thank you all for what you've done to make today possible and to honor the legacy of Cardinal O'Connor, a member of the Georgetown class of 1970. His PhD was earned here. And it's a special pleasure to be with you this morning to present this year's Reverend Thomas M. King, S.J. Award. This award possesses a special resonance for me. Father King was the first Jesuit, the first faculty member that I met when I came to Georgetown as a freshman more than 40 years ago. He helped introduce me to the way of life of our community and to the kind of academic work that was possible. I lived in the residence hall right behind this hall. It's now the home for our humanities departments, but in the mid-1970s, New North was a first-year residence hall, and Father King was the chaplain in residence on the second floor where I lived. I remember a few years later, when I was a graduate student, he convened an international conference on Teilhard and the unity of knowledge, right here in Gaston Hall, that brought together some of the most extraordinary leaders of the Academy from around the world. It was my first exposure to the work of Pierre Teilhard de Chardin, of whom Father King was a devoted scholar, and more importantly, for all of us here at Georgetown, it was just an extraordinary, and for me, my first truly academic conference that I had ever attended, an example of the caliber and quality of academic work that this institution can do. During his time in our community, which spanned 4 decades, and many generations of Georgetown students, he served as professor of theology, scholar, distinguished author, mentor, friend. He had a special relationship with our student Right to Life organization, played a significant role in their efforts to host this conference, and shared a deep understanding and love, a respect for the dignity of every human life. His dedication was recognized in 2005 when he received the Rupert and Timothy Smith Award for Distinguished Contributions to Pro-Life Scholarship from the University Faculty for Life, an organization he co-founded in 1989. Father King was a comforting presence who played an enduring role in the lives of so many members of our Georgetown community, especially those who joined him at his daily 11:15 Mass in Dahlgren Chapel. For 40 years, 6 days a week, during moments of both celebration and of sadness, he presided and offered guidance to all who sought peace in the presence of the Lord. In 1999, our student newspaper, The Hoya, named Father King as Georgetown's Man of the Century, sharing that, quote, "No one has had a more significant presence on campus and effect on students than Father King," close quote. There are many images and memories I have of him, but I always think of the way that he ended every one of his masses. A private, quiet moment of prayer where he read the words of John's Gospel. "In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was God, and the Word was with God." When I think of Father King, I think of this gift of providing the opportunity in countless ways, but especially every evening at our 11:15 Mass, for our community to come together and to experience the presence of God. Father King had a wonderful spirit and patience. He was a person of extraordinary integrity and a model of what it means to be a man for others and a man for God. So it's wonderful for me to be here with all of you this morning and to have this opportunity to remember him and his contributions. And now I have the honor of announcing this year's Reverend Thomas M. King, S.J. Awardee, and that is Marquette for Life from Marquette University, and Kayla Bonet, Marquette for Life President, and Kate Payon, their secretary, will be accepting the award. So Kayla and Kate, if you could please join me on stage.
Thank you so much, President DeGioia, and another round of applause for Marquette for Life. All right. I now have a few announcements before we move into our breakout sessions. These breakout sessions are opportunities to explore different life issues in more depth. Information about the breakout schedule and the various speakers can be found in your program on pages 5 through 10. The first of the 3 sessions begins at 11:10, so in just a few moments. The sessions take place in the first 4 classrooms of this building, Healy Hall, as well as McGuire Hall and Dahlgren Chapel. Please refer to the map on page 4 of your programs to find your way. And please do not hesitate to find any one of our volunteers with name tags on if you have any questions or need help getting around. Finally, when you checked in, you should have received a wristband. The wristbands are color-coded to indicate when and where you'll be eating lunch. Please take a moment to refer to page 3 of your programs and to look at your wristband. If you have a red wristband, you will be eating during session A, which begins at 11:10, in Copley Formal. Please walk out the front steps of this building where ushers will meet you and direct you to Copley Formal. White wristbands will also be eating during session A, but on the second floor of this building. Please eat lunch during your designated session and leave the remaining 2 sessions to enjoy 2 breakout sessions of your choosing. Please note, Reverend Derek McCoy, who is listed in the program, will be replaced by Star Parker. You can find her bio on the flyers that were given to you with the programs at check-in. As you know, we have many students and faculty in attendance today. If you find that one of the sessions you are hoping to attend is full, please head to our largest breakout session spaces, Dahlgren Chapel and the Bioethics Library. So with that said, we'll move into the breakout sessions now. Thank you very much.